this might be controversial. Bear with me on this. Because there is a trend, you know, there's sort of some podcast bros that are married but are kind of like almost bragging about not really loving their wives, and they're kind of like laughing about it. A lot of women, understandably so, are very upset with this. Yet, on the flip side, you have someone like a Michelle Obama who actually writes a book and talks in her book about for a good 10 years she couldn't stand her husband. A lot of women back her up on that. And I know, at first glance, that seems like a double standard, but they're not the exact same thing. In the situation where you have the guys sitting around and kind of like laughing about not loving their wives, and it kind of felt like this like bash woman fest. Whereas when you had like say Michelle, or I think oftentimes when you have women that are complaining about their husbands or have issues with their husbands or things like that, usually, and Michelle goes into the reasons why she was finding her marriage difficult, why she was frustrated with her husband. She was resenting him for different things. So it feels less of an attack because Michelle will go into the reasons why she had issues with her husband and the reasons why things were strained, as opposed to when you have a group of men who are just sitting there and like laughing about not loving their wives and how like, well, you know, of course I don't love my wife, ha 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 ha. Where it feels like, okay, well, why don't you love your wife? Like what's going on here? Like what's the hurdle? Like why do you think you shouldn't love your wife? Like they don't get deeper than that. And so it just ends up feeling like a hate fest towards women. Whereas with Michelle, when she actually does dive into some of the reasons why the relationship was strained at that time, it feels less of like just an insult to him or an insult to men in general. It's more of an observation about like what she was dealing with and what her relationship was going through.